The following program is paid for by Kelcher Communications.
Winston-Salem, a city built on tobacco, textiles, technology. Its citizens, ingenious, creative, hardworking. A key ingredient in the success of this city was the black population that provided a strong labor force for the factories, mills, and other support services.
Hello, everybody. I'm Margaret Johnson, and I'm here with J.P. Beatty. Hey, J.P.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm just fine.
And we want to welcome you to the first edition of the Rise to Prominence. This is a 4-part documentary which digs very deeply into African-American history in Winston-Salem. And it is told to you, J.P., by some of the most prominent people in this community who are still working their magic today, right?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
And of course, we wanted to share these stories now so they aren't lost and the next generation and the next generation can remember them.
Absolutely, Margaret.
All right, so you're the producer.
Yes.
So tell us about you and how this came about.
Well, there's not a lot to tell about me, but I would say this. I got my start in video production right here in Winston-Salem. This is my hometown. This is where I grew up. I live in Atlanta now, but I tell everybody Winston-Salem is my home, so don't get it twisted. But I got my start in video production and television right here at Channel 12 WXII years ago. And it was a great place to work. I learned technical stuff, and then I moved into management. And then I resigned to go to grad school in Atlanta. Did that, got back into television production because I missed it. And as I was working in television production, doing all these videos around town and across the country, I would meet people and they would say, well, how did you learn all this video production, all this stuff, man, living in the South?
Because you're smart like that.
Well, no, I don't know about all that part, but I love it. And I would say to them, well, what do you mean by living in the South? What does that have to do with it? Well, you know, segregation. I said, well, okay, where are you from? Oh, I'm from Springfield, and I'm from Philly, and I'm from these places up north. I said, okay, let's not play that game. Segregation was across this country. I said, okay, and it is bad. It was bad. It had its pitfalls, its downfalls. Don't get it twisted. I said, but here's the other thing. It jailed the black communities. At least it did in my hometown. I said, because in my hometown, we had black businesses all over. We had black neighborhoods, not just in one section of town, but all over. And I said, you know, I didn't know what it was like to ride in the back of the bus. I read about it and I heard about it, but I never experienced it because we had our own bus company. I said, we had a black hospital, you know, that was staffed by black doctors and nurses and administrators. And I said, you know, I never had a white doctor touch me until I went into the Navy. So when I would tell them these stories about coming home to the Big Four reunion, the all high school reunion, and they were like, wait a minute, you go home to your high school reunion? I said, yeah, don't you? They said, no. I said, well, wait a minute. You said a few minutes ago, you know, how great your school was, but no, I don't know those people. I said, well, I know everybody that I went to school with from first grade all the way through high school. That's how we gel together as a community here. But you know, Margaret, the more I thought about it, I started saying, you know, I need to tell this story. I need to tell it. So I started making phone calls. I called my buddies, like I said, I called buddies that I've been knowing forever. I called Billy Rich, who worked with me at WXII, we're best of buddies. I called Rudy Anderson, who worked with me at WXII, we're best of buddies. I called Miss Cheryl Harry with Tricultural Arts, whose husband is one of my best of buddies, Miles. So we all talked and said, let's do this.
He's got a lot of buddies.
I've been blessed. But so this is how it all came about. And I just wanted to tell this story. I know other folks have done stories on Winston-Salem's Black history, but this was in my heart. And I was just like, okay, I got to get this out and do it.
Well, in part one of this documentary series, you speak with some pretty heavy hitters, like Linda Dark, who is co-chair of the Winston-Salem Archives. You also speak with Jim Shaw, local businessman and community leader, and Muter Evans, who at 26 owns her own radio station. I mean, who does that? What do you make of all of this?
It is amazing. It's amazing. But you know, a lot of times what I found, Margaret, is that people hear the public side of these folks' lives, their successes. They don't hear about the other struggles to get there. And in my conversation with these folks, they sat and talked to me and told me their story from growing up through the struggles, the ups, the downs, everything.
The good, the bad, the ugly.
And I just sat there in awe and listened. I didn't even say anything. But their stories are so inspiring that I wanted other folks to hear these stories, particularly younger folks, so that you can be inspired to be whatever you want to be. So here we are.
Yeah, here we are, and we don't want to make you wait. So let's start with Linda Dark.
In Winston, the earlier years, even going back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was a vibrant African American community. And everyone knows about, for instance, Simon Green Atkins and Winston-Salem State. I'm not a Winston-Salem State graduate, but I know it was founded in 1892 as the normal school, Slater Normal. And that's ingrained into their students as they come in as freshmen. But there were so many other things in Winston. I like to say we were a community within a community. It was segregated, but we had our own community. Our parents and grandparents protected us. So we felt safe. We felt we had dignity. We did not have to suffer the indignities that they had to go through in a segregated society. So we had doctors, we had lawyers, we had a bus company, we had other transportation entities, we had education, we had businesses. The business spirit, entrepreneurs, was wonderful during that time. We had our own theaters to go to because we were not allowed to go to the white theaters downtown. We had our own hospital eventually, where many of the black doctors came to train from Howard Medical School or Meharry Medical School. So we had all these things. We were our own community. We were self-sufficient. And there was a lot of celebration in that and a lot of pride. And it was just a wonderful time.
Winston-Salem's economic growth was based largely on the tobacco industry. Tobacco factories such as R.J. Reynolds and Winston Leaf were major businesses and employed many of Winston-Salem's black residents. And although it provided a steady income, the working conditions were not ideal. Exposure to tobacco dust for long hours caused health issues for some employees. Yet, if you could get hired, you were considered to be very fortunate.
Well, speaking of tobacco, we're all on Tobacco Road, as you know. And I think Winston should have been called Tobacco City. There is a Tobaccoville, but it's not Winston-Salem. And there is a Reynoldstown in the area, a neighborhood in the area of Winston-Salem. But of course, everybody knows R.J. Reynolds started his tobacco company here. I think, personally, there were positive results of that as well as negative, because Reynolds Tobacco did not have a union, did not allow a union, did not want a union. We all know in the 30s, 40s, unions were mainly for the protection of their workers. But that did not happen in Winston-Salem. At the same time, some positive things were employees were offered profit sharing, and so that was a good thing. I could not get into Reynolds because at the time, there was no one in my family who worked at Reynolds. You were lucky if you had a relative working at Reynolds, because then you automatically had a job. I wasn't that lucky. But the problem was, because it was such a company town, of course, like any other company town, other things got squashed. Reynolds did a lot for Winston-Salem. Reynolds hired a lot of workers from little towns in Virginia, in South Carolina, so that was a good thing because you had a great job at Reynolds. Of course, there were disadvantages because it was a time of segregation. It was a time of Jim Crow. But the point that I want to make is not everybody worked at Reynolds. A lot of people did, but not everybody was a Reynolds employee, because there were people who worked for Safe Bus Company. There were people who were in professions. There were people who had their own businesses, men and women. We didn't discriminate in the black community. There was LeMay Beauty School. Mrs. Forte was a graduate herself of Madam C.J. Walker School, and she taught others. There was Naomi McLean, and she had her stenographic company. There was the Russell Business School. There were many, many, many entrepreneurs in town. So not everybody worked for Reynolds. A lot of people did, and a lot of people were happy to have those jobs, and it was a very important job to have. But there were many other people as well, and I guess that's one area that I'm a little concerned about, because when some people talk about the African American community in Winston, it's always, well, tell me about Reynolds. But there were other things too.
You're watching The Rise to Prominence. We'll continue the conversation with Linda Dark right after the break.
We can make that happen, definitely.
This looks great.
We'll bring it and have
Getting through the morning meeting in one piece?
Thanks.
Feels good. Then realizing it's payday. That definitely feels good. All while keeping the kids busy and the clients happy? You're unstoppable. With a Wells Fargo checking account, you can bank without missing a beat.
Looking for that special outfit for a special occasion or everyday wear? Then step into Keona's boutique and hat shop and step out in couture suits, dresses, designer hats, and accessories that accentuate how special you are. You see, at Keona's boutique and hat shop, we specialize in women's fashions that are legendary. So remember, for that special occasion or a classy look anytime, you can find the style that is just right for you. Keona's boutique and hat shop, 235 West 5th Street, Winston-Salem.
It has been said that one's history is the pathway to one's future. Winston-Salem has a rich history of accomplishments made by its black citizens. In business, medicine, education, politics, government, and much more, and must not be overlooked or forgotten.
The reason that we need to preserve our history, that any group needs to preserve its history, is so that young people, generations that come after certain events, know about what happened. We have young people in the city now, born after Dr. Martin Luther King, born just recently, and they may not know all of the accomplishments of the African American community here. So we need to preserve that information. A lot of the businesses, a lot of the buildings, a lot of the structure of the city is gone due to redevelopment, various other reasons. So the only way that we can know about this and tell future generations is by historic preservation. I had a situation happen long after it occurred, but I have a nephew who was in high school at the time. Now, I didn't find this out until I was an adult and he was an adult. But he went to an integrated high school. I went to a segregated high school, but by the time he came along, the schools were integrated. And the kids got the usual homework assignment, write a story about an interesting person. Well, he wrote a story about his grandfather. I'm sorry, his great-grandfather, William Scales. And at the time that he wrote the story, he was aware through personal experience of his great-grandfather having a bonding business, Scales Bonding, a theater, at one time there were two, and various other businesses. The story goes, my grandfather, his great-grandfather, used to sell toilets on the front lawn, which sold, but my grandmother didn't like it, but it worked. So he wrote a story about this, and he turned that into his teacher. And the response he got was, this is not true. No man in Winston-Salem could have owned this much property, could have had a bonding business. That just didn't happen in that day and time, because we were talking from the 1920s to around the 1940s. Well, of course, he was crushed, but he did not tell anybody in the family that this happened. So when I found out about it in later life and after I became a family historian, I was really upset, because I told me, if you had just told me, if you had just called me, I have the documents to prove it. I have the artifacts from Scales Bonding Company. I would have walked into that school, talked to the principal, talked to that teacher, and said, here it is. This is true.
The staff and members of the Winston-Salem African American Archives work tirelessly to collect artifacts, pictures, stories, and more to help preserve Winston-Salem's Black history. And this is how it all started.
Well, the organization, we are a subcommittee of this organization that started many years ago with Winston-Salem State faculty who felt the need to preserve artifacts, family memorabilia, etc. And we have been working for the last 5 years to continue this. We have increased our membership. It's a small group still, but we have increased our membership. And we try to put on exhibits, make presentations, particularly for the community, for young people in the community, because many of them do not know their history of Winston-Salem. And Winston-Salem has a very vibrant history, going all the way back to the early 1800s and before. But many people don't remember that, don't know about it. One of the very, very important things about preserving our history is the fact that it can get lost so easily. And we experienced this. As I said, our collection was started in the 1980s. There were some faculty members at Winston-Salem State. Somewhere along the way, as they died out, the collection became very fragile, and there was one point where we were afraid that we were actually going to lose it. It was in danger of being gotten rid of. Two of our members, Billy Rich and Lester Davis, found out about this, thank goodness. And they went over to the campus and discussed with the persons who had the collection at the time that it was really, really necessary that this collection be saved. I was not a member of the group at the time, but I understand that they used a lot of elbow grease and got boxes and bags and whatever was necessary to physically take this collection, save it from the dumpster or wherever it was going. And for a time, it was in storage, but at least it was preserved. And then when we came along recently and we were able to actually go through and categorize the various items that were there, it's just a treasure. It's a treasure. The collection includes photographs, slides, artifacts, laminated newspapers from the 1920s, all kinds of things, portraits, some of them were color, of our ancestors. And it's just a treasure. It's hard to get people today interested in things of the past. You know, we're more interested in going to the mall or buying stuff or whatever, or the latest celebrity gossip. But if you can get people to sit down long enough to see the treasures, to see what has survived from 1920 or 1936 or 1942, you can pull them in most of the time, but they have to see it. They have to touch it. They have to feel it. We have bricks from Mr. George Black's brickyard. So these are the things that are very fragile. We need to preserve them. We need to make sure that they don't disappear, because disappear they will if we're not careful. So thank you, Billy. Thank you, Lester.
The dedication and commitment to preserve Winston-Salem's Black history is very much needed and appreciated. Today's events will become tomorrow's history, so we all must think about what we can do to make sure our stories continue to be relevant, revered, and serve as a reminder of who we are, what we've accomplished in the past, and what we will accomplish in the future.
What do we have to do to make this work? And that is very difficult. It's very much a challenge. There's an economic challenge. There's a social challenge. A lot of people say history. That's over and done with. That's gone. But if we don't preserve it, then there's the old saying, if we don't know our history, we may repeat the negative parts of it. So we want to preserve it. We want to talk about it. We want to celebrate it so that we can build on what our grandparents and our ancestors built for us. We are standing on their shoulders. A lot of people may not realize that, but we are standing on the shoulders of the people who came before us.
Some pretty powerful stuff, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And of course, our thanks to Linda Dark and the members of the Winston-Salem African American Archives for all that they have done and they continue to do to help preserve Winston-Salem's Black history. Now, you just saw some of the earlier Black businesses, and coming up next is the story of Jim Shaw, entrepreneur, successful business owner, and a highly respected community leader. Don't go away.
A good community is essential to a good life, and M&F Bank has been your community bank for more than 100 years. Our focus is to provide capital for small and medium-sized businesses, and being a community bank, all banking decisions are made locally. Please visit our website to learn more at mfbonline.com or call us at 336-722-0200. M&F Bank, where relationship banking is our most important priority.
Welcome back to The Rise to Prominence, a 4-part documentary about the lives and contributions to the city by some of Winston-Salem's most influential Black citizens. Now, in this segment, JP, we do get an inside look at the life and career of Mr. Jim Shaw. He's a successful business owner and a highly respected community leader. Now, JP, you had a special friendship with Jim Shaw.
Absolutely, I did. Mr. Shaw and my brother Al were like best of buddies. So to me, Jim Shaw was like another big brother. And he would give me advice just like my big brother Al. So, but watching Jim Shaw own and operate his own businesses probably is one of the factors that inspired me to jump out here on my own. So that's how we are. Mr. Shaw is amazing.
Yeah, pretty amazing story. So let's get to Mr. Jim Shaw right now.
You know, we've had a lot of Black business in Winston-Salem. Urban renewal have taken that away from Winston-Salem. You know, I remember back in late 50s, you go downtown, you could see, you couldn't hardly walk on Church Street, 3rd Street, and 4th Street. We had 2 movie theaters, Lincoln Theater on Church, Lafayette Theater on 4th Street. People would gather there. They had restaurants, they had clothing stores, they had food stores. They had everything on Winston-Salem. That's where we go, because the movie went for 15 cents, you know. And we miss all of that. But urban renewal come along, that have stopped all that. We don't have the Black business we used to have. Liberty Street was lined with businesses from car dealerships to Maytag wash machines to pool rooms. We had clothing stores. We had furniture stores. My brother had a furniture store on the 1400 block of Liberty Street. I had Shaw Gulf Service, was one of the largest Gulf dealers in the southeast part of the United States. I was the first Black B.F. Goodrich dealer in the United States. You had a whole lot of businesses, like you had barber shops, you had beauty parlors, you had furniture stores, had funeral homes, you had anything you wanted was on Liberty Street. Plumbing companies, you go back, I tell you what's funny, it's not funny, but he had Johnson's Home of Memories. He built a brand new building right off of 14th Street and Liberty Street. That's the first time I experienced you had a drive-through funeral home where you could go through and view the body. But hell, I was scared to go through there, but I did. I thought that was just fantastic. Not then, but today, I think that was a good thing. I think you had Hooper's Funeral Home, you had Russell Funeral Home, you had it just a whole lot of businesses in Winston-Salem. And today, I'm going to provide you with a list of all the businesses in 1973 through 1980 something of Winston-Salem. It's a bunch of them. People just don't know.
There were many black-owned businesses, but their clientele was limited, and most of their business came from the black communities. Jim Shaw, who already owned a Gulf service station, would start a new business that would attract a mix of customers and corporations.
You know, I was sitting in the service station one day, and a couple of white guys from Ohio came in and said they had been to a meeting at the Chamber of Commerce, and they wanted to talk to Jim Shaw, who they said was qualified. They needed a qualified black to own a B.F. Goodrich franchise. I told them that I don't know about the qualification, but I am black. So we'll take a shot at it. So we took a look at it, and we bought some land at 1235 North Liberty Street. We built a new building called Jim Shaw's B.F. Goodrich Tire Store. And I became the first black in America to own a franchise. We had about 26 employees. We had off-the-road trucks with equipment where we could go out and do off-the-road equipment on tractors and bulldozers or whatever. We did that, and that made me feel good that I was able to do that. The problem back then were, you know, we could go to our major companies and try to get contracts or try to sell tires to them, and it wasn't a black thing, it wasn't a white thing, it was a thing that the purchasing people were white, and they just didn't feel that we was qualified to meet their needs. But after a few years went by, they found out that we could, so I was able to sell B.F. Goodrich tires to R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company, to a division of R.J. Reynolds Sealand. We sold tires in New Orleans, and New Jersey, and New York, and Kentucky, and South Carolina, you know, everything, you know, that we could do for Reynolds. And I have to thank a guy named Charlie Johnson, who was the president, vice president of R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company. And he worked with me so close. We had the Black Purchasers Association where we met once a month in Greensboro. I recall an incident when they had the National Purchasers Association in New Orleans. And he wanted me to come down there and talk to her. Well, I had never been a speaker, never claimed to be, but I went down there and I had to stay at the hotel there in New Orleans, and they put me in a little bitty room about 4 feet wide and 4 feet long, and I'd never been a complainer. So I put the bellboy put my luggage in that room, and I set my luggage on the bed, and I went back down to the lobby. There wasn't no blacks. I didn't see no blacks, so I just sit down and waited. And finally, Mr. Johnson's wife came down and looked at me and said, "Shaw, what's wrong with you?" And I said, "Nothing, Mrs. Johnson." She said, "Come here." So I walked over to her, and she said, "Something ain't right with you. I know you. What's wrong? How's your room?" I said, "It's a room. I can sleep there." She said, "Let's go up to the room and look at it." Well, I was kind of scared to go up to the room with a white woman, you know. So I went up to the room, and the room was so small, and it was made where the ceiling was kind of slanted, you know. So I had to bow down to get to my bed. So she went down. She said, "Come on." She went downstairs. She said, "Sit down until I get back." She went and got her husband, Mr. Charlie Johnson. And Mr. Charlie was a man that, you know, with many, many words, you know. He could say things that I never heard before. He walked up to the desk and he said, "Why y'all have Mr. Shaw in this room?" I invited him down. He said, that's the only room we got. And he told him, if you don't find him a better room, I'm going to pull all the national purchasing people out of your hotel in 15 minutes. In about 30 minutes, they called me to the desk. I went upstairs. I had a room about 20 by 20. I had roses. I had wine. I had everything. And I was just laughing. I laugh about that today with my kids and grandkids. But, you know, I went through a lot of things. But, hey, I mean, that was great. You know, being able to own a franchise and own a Gulf station and own a convenience store and to own, able me to buy property, houses, that was a good thing. Not that I'm lucky, I had to work hard. I had to work hard to accomplish the things that I felt that my family deserved. I'm a happy man today. I have been happy. I'm going to always be happy. If I have to eat on the ground, I'm going to be happy, because if I eat on the ground pretty soon, I'm on part of it. That's the way I think, that's the way I feel, and I'll take that to my grave.
Through hard work and determination, Jim Shaw was able to build and sustain his business for many years. But in today's society, businesses are no longer limited to serve a certain market. So one would have to ask, are there still opportunities for African Americans to start and operate successful businesses?
I look at my own business. You know, my kids wanted to move away. They didn't want to do what I was doing, I don't reckon. But they didn't. They want to do their own thing. But the opportunity in Winston-Salem has been in business, it was here. And it's still here. And I think it's going to come back. It's going to come back soon, because there's a change coming. And sometimes people don't like change. I know I don't like change that much. I can go home right now and my wife done moved a chair that I sit in. My question is why? You know, and she don't say nothing, but 2 months from now, she'll move that same chair back. My thing is, why you move it back? That's a change, but we got to get used to change if we want to make progress. Winston-Salem is a city like the area I live in, the water I live in. There haven't been no businesses built in Winston-Salem in 40-some years. When I became president of Liberty CDC, we built 5 or 6 new businesses on Liberty Street. And that's about it, but it's still there. So we need a change in order to make that happen, to bring in more businesses. I just feel that with the mayor we have and the work that he has put in it, in terms of corporations in this city, our local businesses, we have fought so hard for diversity in our companies, and we want to keep that going. We've been trying to work out for the homeless, do things for the homeless people, get them off the streets and stuff, and give them houses. That's very important. We just gonna have to continue to grow. But what we must understand that we gonna have to keep our young people involved. We don't want to keep our young people involved. We don't want to train our young people. We probably want to, but we don't. It's something like church. You know, you go to church and sit in somebody's seat and they come up and say, you need to move. My grandmother sat here 50 years ago, 100 years ago. We got to get away from that. It's the same thing. And if you don't do it like my mother and father did it, you know, that's wrong. But young people are not going to do it that way. They want to do it their way in the best interest of the city of Winston-Salem and the community. I just see that a whole lot of changes are coming for the good. East Winston, we could do better in East Winston if we put a head to it and start thinking about other people and take self out of it. You know, I was the largest Gulf dealer in the southeast part of the United States, but that's not important. What's important is making other people do better than I did. I used to tell my kids, I want you to own more than I own. I want you to have more than I had. I want you to do things. I want you to hire people. I want you to work with people, love and care for people, help feed the hungry, help clothe the naked. This is what's important. This is what God wants. And that's just how I feel. That's just the way it is. Thank you. I appreciate it. Anything I can do for the city of Winston-Salem, my city, my county, my state, my country, I would do it in the best interests of all people.
You're watching The Rise to Prominence, a conversation with Jim Shaw.
We can make that happen, definitely.
This looks great.
We'll bring it and have.
Getting through the morning meeting in one piece?
Thanks.
Feels good. Then realizing it's payday. That definitely feels good. All while keeping the kids busy and the clients happy? You're unstoppable. With a Wells Fargo checking account, you can bank without missing a beat.
With a love for community and a vision for the future, in 2010, Jim Shaw launched a program to expose and inspire teens to seek careers they may have never considered or thought possible.
I'm just so lucky, not lucky, I'm so fortunate to be able to meet and talk to people. I've had 2 or 3 appointments from the governor of the state of North Carolina. I've had appointments from the mayors of the city of Winston-Salem, and I'm as fortunate to be able to communicate with people, to show people I love them, to show people how I feel. And this is why I have the Jim Shaw Ace Academy, where I can bring kids together and let kids know, not black kids, not white kids, I bring all kids together and let them see that they can make a living other than playing football and sports. There's a living in aviation. And this is what we're going to do, and this is something I'm proud of. I'm proud of my family. I have a good wife. I have 4 kids. I have 7 grandkids and 3 great-grandkids. So I'm happy. I really am happy. I'm a happy man. If I leave here tomorrow, I can leave thanking God. You know, my wife used to kid me about, I used to say that, I hope Lord let me live till my kids get out of college. She did that. And then she said, now you want to live till your grandkids get out of college. They're out of college. Now you're saying you want to live till your grandkids. God gonna get tired of you. Thank you. I appreciate it, JP. Thank you.
Jim Shaw's list of accomplishments are extensive and admirable. They include largest Gulf oil dealer by volume in the southeastern United States, first black B.F. Goodrich franchise dealer in the United States, named Man of the Year by Parkway Plaza Shopping Center, named Father and Son of the Year by the YMCA, named Man of the Year by the Winston-Salem Chronicle newspaper, first black person to serve on the board of the Winston-Salem Sports Commission, first black chairman of the Winston-Salem Better Business Bureau, president of the Liberty Street Community Development Corporation, vice chairman of the Airport Commission of Forsyth County, president and founder of the Jim Shaw Ace Academy, and a member of numerous boards.
Well, JP, sadly, our community said goodbye to Jim Shaw in 2020.
Yeah, Margaret, he passed November 2020, and of course he's missed by his family and many, many friends. But Jim Shaw, thank you, brother Jim Shaw, left a legacy because he left this city in a much, much better place.
No doubt, he certainly did. Well, still to come in this hour, her dream was to become the next Walter Cronkite. But see how that dream turned into so much more. Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. You're absolutely going to love this next story. It's about a woman who, at the tender age of 26, bought her own radio station and became the youngest person to own a radio station. Pretty remarkable stuff.
Yes, Margaret. And you know, she was also the second black woman to own a radio station. And she was the youngest and the second black woman to own a radio station. But let me tell you a quick story. Growing up, when I grew up listening to the WAA radio station, that was part of your regular daily life. You know what I'm talking about. We listened to Bobcat in the mornings. We were getting dressed to go to school. And then we would listen to Daddy-O on the patio on the weekends and during the weekend. It was amazing.
You're showing your age, buddy.
It's all right. I'm glad to be here. So, but it was amazing. And so her story is a phenomenal story.
And I love the part about her saying that her initial dream was to become the next Walter Cronkite. But as you'll see, she is so much more than her dream.
Yes.
Here's Muter Evans.
Actually, my original goal, JP, was to become the female Walter Cronkite. That was my original goal. There were no HBCUs in the state that even offered a major in communications at that time. The only two in the country were Howard and Hampton Institute, which is what it still was at the time. I was accepted into Hampton, but I chose not to go there because of what it would have cost with additional expenses with being an out-of-state student. So I was always practical in my pursuit, and I could have gone to any HBCU in the state on a full ride, but none of them offered what I wanted to do.
Determined to pursue her dream of becoming a network news anchor, Muter Evans enrolled at Wake Forest University to earn her degree in communications. While a student there, she had the opportunity to work at WAAA radio station.
The summer going into my senior year, I worked at AAA as a news reporter. There was another person who was the news director who soon left, and it really left me with the full responsibility. So I produced a couple of programs that had long been a part of the station, which I continued as the owner. Personalities in the Community, which was a 15-minute interview program. And there was another one, I can't recall the name of it now, but I did that. So my voice was still on the radio every week. And then came up the internship, which I told them I could no longer do this. It was Christmas break and the 414. So, Bob, I'm not going to be able to continue to do this. And so he said, okay. So he was aware of the TV opportunity. I went by to see him in the spring and to say goodbye to folks. And when he found out that I wasn't going to do the TV job, he said, so what you going to do? I said, I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet. And he gave me the opportunity to return after I graduated. And I took 2 weeks to be able to get out of the dorm, take stuff home, come back and get settled. And I started working at AAA Radio full-time January 1 of 75 and as the news director. Then came the opportunity to become general manager and executive vice president. So I continued to work. We did fine. The station grew. The popularity of that there was a black general manager. There was a mixed staff. When I took over, some of the more seasoned people stayed on board with me for a while before they went elsewhere. I recruited other people in, and so my staff included lots of folks who were my age, some older, but we worked hard together and we had fun together.
You're watching The Rise to Prominence, conversations with some of the icons of Winston-Salem's African American history.
A good community is essential to a good life, and M&F Bank has been your community bank for more than 100 years. Our focus is to provide capital for small and medium-sized businesses, and being a community bank, all banking decisions are made locally. Please visit our website to learn more at mfbonline.com or call us at 336-722-0200. M&F Bank, where relationship banking is our most important priority.
So after I accepted the promotion to general manager and executive vice president, I can't remember exactly how long it was before Bob approached me and told me he was thinking about selling the station. And being true to his word, he was letting me know first to see if I was interested. My reaction to him was, I said, oh no, you can't do that. And he says, why? Why can't I? I said, because I'm not ready. And you'd have to know him to see the laugh that goes on. And he then said, as he rubbed the back of his head, he said, Muta, opportunity doesn't always knock when you're ready. You have to seize them because sometimes they don't come back around. Well, that made sense. There was a lot that I had to do to learn about in the process. I didn't know any other black owners, male or female. And so, but I dared to find out. Sometimes people are mistaken and think that I bought the station as during the time of the late 70s. There were several things that were going on with the FCC that involved distress sale and et cetera. And that was not the case between Bob and me. It was a straight out deal. However, as he put the price tag there and what he wanted for it, there was also the SBA was involved, and they were willing to do some financing for part of it. So all of that was being explored. And so we negotiated outside of our attorneys. And of course, as I was doing that, I did consult with my parents about it. Mom said, baby, you're going to be in debt for the rest of your life. And we don't have that kind of money. My dad said to me, if that's what you want to do, go for it. He says, I don't know anybody who has anything worth anything that they didn't go in debt for. I don't know a thing about the business, about radio. But if you need me to come and help and clean the building up good for you, call me. Dad would be there. That's all I needed, JP. On top of that, my initial financing, I could not have done also without a relationship with Greensboro National Bank. Bob Childs was the manager of the bank. And for the initial down payment, the loan came from them. And it was secured by my parents and property, including the home place, which was an awful heavy burden. Even then, and even more so when I think back on it. But to have the trust and the confidence from your parents that they're willing to put up the home place for you to pursue this opportunity meant everything to me. It meant that I worked even harder. Quit was not an option. It just was not an option. So with that in place, we continued to pursue the deal, and with SBA support, we finally worked out something. But there again, it was one of those situations where, as I had attempted to talk to other folks, that I never got to that point, because what they saw in front of them was a young black female, single no less, trying to enter into a white man's world, and it just wasn't happening. And I became even more determined, because how dare you say what I can and cannot do? You don't know me. you're not even willing to get to know me to see whether or not I am worth the long shot. I acquired the station in 78, in 79, when it was finalized. In so doing, I will just, as a quick aside, it was put out there that I was the first black woman. Technically, I was the second black woman, but I must say, even though it was my struggle, I could not have made it without having had some very good people who worked with me along throughout, both on the air and people who were creative, and people who also believed. They didn't really recognize what it was at the same time, but they worked hard because we had fun. And so AAA had quite a heritage before I ever got there. The fact that Larry Williams, who was the first person to sign on the station, the AAA radio, of course, is the third oldest in the station. It was the first black program station in the state of North Carolina. Larry Williams and his name just left me, Togo West's father, did the first broadcast on October 28th, 1950. And it was of the football game between A&T and Morgan State. But in the 50s, with him and Robert Bobtree, Roundtree, Oscar Daddio Alexander, Fred Steady Eddie Allen, all of these guys, and while they were still living.
You know what? If this was TV, you could see me. If I was on the stage, I'd be a radio. But since this is radio, you're listening to Daddy on the Patio.
Stay tuned. There's more to come.
We can make that happen, definitely.
This looks great.
We'll bring it and have
Getting through the morning meeting in one piece?
Thanks.
Feels good. Then realizing it's payday. That definitely feels good. All while keeping the kids busy and the clients happy? You're unstoppable. With a Wells Fargo checking account, you can bank without missing a beat.
After 27 years of owning and operating the station, FCC rules were changing, allowing large corporations to acquire and franchise radio stations across the country, which caused problems for owners of smaller stations.
Rules and regulations continued to change in the FCC. When I purchased the station, no person could own more than 3 AMs and 3 FMs. And they were, and that was be only 2 in the marketplace. But the time I was out the business, that was no longer the case. It had gone up to like 10 and then 20, 25, and then it was 40. And now, of course, you've got a handful of companies that own every station pretty much in the country. So you no longer have the diversity of programming. And what the FCC attempted to create in the 30s has gone like the baby down the river with the water, the rich get richer, and those who are without no longer have, and the voices are not there. So
Today, Muter Evans continues to be an active leader in the community, mentoring teens and young adults, doing volunteer work with community organizations, and hosting the annual MLK Noon Hour celebration.
January 15th, 1981, the MLK Noon Hour commemoration was born. We had it downtown, what was then known as NCMB Plaza, with Ike's suggestion with that, because I wanted to have it in a place because of short notice where people who were working could have access, could get to it. Did it at 12 noon because, as I said, it wasn't a holiday anywhere. So sacrifice your lunch, grab a hot dog on the way, eat a nab, drink a bottle of water, go back to work. But at the same time, we have acknowledged this man and the contributions that he made. So in 1986, when the rest of the community, when some others in the community decided to acknowledge his birthday, that we'd already done 5 programs. And so it's kind of come full circle that I've been working with some young folks, and though it's challenging as it is in the time in which we live, the more things change, the more they remain the same. People still need someone to listen to them, to believe in them, to encourage them, and to motivate them, and to not be afraid to tell them the truth, not what they want to hear. I'm not trying to be your buddy. And with young folks, hey, I'm old enough to be your grandmama. And for some of you who had real young mamas, I may be old enough to be your great grandmama. But definitely your grandmama, your mama, your auntie, whatever. And I try and help them to see the possibilities. So it's been a labor of love, no matter what I've done in radio, outside of radio, with MLK, other projects and things that I'm involved in continuously. It really all kind of goes back to striving to make a difference. Several years ago, I created the award for the noon hour program, and it's called MLK Dare to Make a Difference Award. And we probably have recognized some 100 people who have made a difference in the area of human and civil rights for the body of work, not for any isolated thing, not for something that they're being paid to do, but also out of a conviction and a dedication to serve. And that's our way of doing that in the spirit of Dr. King, and at the same time trying to make people understand there was only one of him. But that does not mean that you can't do what you do to make a difference in the lives of your family, of your community, of this state, and of this nation. And so we'll still just trotting along.
Well, JP, all I can say about Muter is you rock.
Oh, she's a tough lady. Absolutely tough lady.
All righty. This is just a taste of what we're going to be showing you over the next couple of weeks, because when you join us next Saturday, you'll hear from more remarkable people, more remarkable stories. And these topics will involve Winston-Salem schools and some of the top educators and supporters. Well, that's going to do it for us today. I'm Margaret Johnson with JP Beatty, and we thank you for watching part 1 of the 4-part series, The Rise to Prominence. We'll see you then.
The preceding program was paid for by Kelcher Communications.